Thanks. How are you?
Excellent. We
Great.
are we are live with no
Excellent.
interruptions, and you sound great. It
Thank you.
seems like you know Mr. Musk is getting the hang of these spaces. They've made some improvements and fixed some of the issues that were quite apparent early on.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time I've been able to log in through the link within my own X account. So yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for setting this up, and thanks to everyone who's joined just ahead of Christmas.
Great. So I'm speaking with James Tansey, CEO of Klimat X, developments, carbon credits, junior essentially. And you guys have had some great news in the last week. In fact, on the 18th, so just Monday morning, you announced that BP Carbon Trading uh, is your first funding partner of a restoration project. They've funded 5,000 hectares of planting so far in Africa. Can you tell us a bit about that and what it means to you to have a major Fortune 100 company like BP as a partner?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge endorsement, and it's the deal that we announced in April. But it's taken a while for them to get comfortable on that land area. So it means a lot because the original model I built for the company is we need to be an asset owner and manager. We need to control the development of these projects and the operation of these projects. And my thesis was we didn't need to work through brokers or intermediaries or even intermediate finance, that there was so much demand for carbon credits from large corporates that we could do these kinds of wholesale agreements. And then when we ran the competitive process finished at the beginning of this year, we looked for the kind of best offers from 16 different groups that were buying in the space, and this one, stood out because it's effective. It's a very high carbon price. It's a pre-purchase, so we're using the buyer's money to invest into the projects, $2.5 million US. That covers all the capex on the project. So, from the perspective of a small company, we're selling something before we produce it at a price that's well above current market prices for credits. And I wanted to prove out that model to the market because there's, for good reason, it's a new space. There's been skepticism about carbon credits, and I wanted to prove that a small cap company run well with the best technology and the best teams in the world could produce something that a Fortune 100 company would buy direct on a pre-purchase basis. So what it says for investors is the way that we use our own equity as we've raised capital is de-risking projects and managing the exploration phase. We're then, using other people's capital to actually implement the projects and still getting prices, in the range of $15 a ton on a pre-purchase basis, which is exceptional in this market.
Another piece of news you had out on the 14th was the research report from Trove, basically showing some
Yeah,
of the trends in the carbon credits space. So, I mean, this is kind of interesting because you talk to one person, you get an entirely different story than if you talk to somebody else. It seems like 2023 has been a very challenging year in this fairly new, sector of the markets, and people are still figuring it out. But then you have the president of the EU saying she sees carbon credits have to be nearly $100 a ton by 2030 to balance the market. So, what's your
yeah,
sense of where we're at in this new sector and what the trends are?
yeah, yeah. I mean, the biggest, and we've seen this a lot in our commercial contracts, but the biggest issue is the biggest challenge in carbon markets in some ways is there's very little price transparency. So most of the transactions are through OTC contracts direct to buyers. All of the best projects get sold that way. So what you end up seeing when you look at the sort of startup carbon exchanges like Air Carbon and CXL is what you see is trading in small volumes around the leftovers that the corporates didn't pick up. So that's one effect, is price discovery isn't like a true commodity as you'd see on other exchanges. The second is there's just a big divergence in the quality of credit. So the average pricing for large volume technology and conservation projects is $5 or $6 a ton, and we've known that for a long time. For projects like ours, which are restoration, which permanently lock up carbon in new forests that are getting planted and restore mangroves and replant mangroves, we've known for a long time that the pricing for those is significantly higher. In our deck, we've talked about the Delta Blue Carbon transaction in Pakistan, which did its first sale at $29 US a ton, and we know from talking to people over there that they're turning down offers currently for 2026 tons. They're turning down offers at $50 a ton for that. So what the Trove report shows is the market's diverged, that the kinds of credits that we produce trade at a premium, that the weighted average is above $20 a ton, and market expectations are 18 to $23 a ton, and our production cost for these credits is a fraction of that. So it gave us very high confidence from what we'd seen on an ad hoc basis that someone like Trove, which is now part of MSCI, is seeing the same kind of pricing signals that we're seeing in the market.
So we're seeing a trend of big oil and gas companies making investments in companies like Klimat X, Star Royalties just received a $21 million investment from a big oil and gas major in Canada, and there's more examples of that, and I feel like there's going to be more coming. What's your sense of how many more companies are going to be making big investments, in this space, and what's the timing of these investments?
It's a great question. I mean, in some cases, there's been, particularly where you're in regulated North American and European markets, they've made some more direct investments. BP's preference was to do this on a pre-purchase basis rather than putting equity into the company. That's, I think, partly a function of their own rules about having ownership in pubcos. But what we're seeing, not just in the oil and gas companies, but from tech companies like Amazon and Apple, Shopify, all of the big buyers, Salesforce as well, some of the big technology-based buyers, is they're just desperate for product. That's the issue. So they're willing to do deals on long-term offtakes around these kinds of projects. And what that allows us to do is have conversations, which we've been quite active in, with institutional investors, in Canada and the US, and particularly in Europe right now, where they're saying, look, someone's got to bridge this gap. Someone's got to be the big producers. And increasingly, just given our track record and the success, I think we've been identified as, frankly, the only listed public company that's an owner operator of these kinds of projects and credits. So we've been approached by a number of different groups who want to do JV partnerships around our projects. We've been approached by investors who say, look, if you can continue to scale this up in 2024, when we're expecting a bit more of a positive view of small caps, we think our best choice is to work with those JV partnerships, lock up as many as the offtake and pre-purchase agreements as we can, and then be extremely efficient with our equity. I mean, I would say to people, like in our Sierra Leone project, we put roughly $2 million into the project to date. BP's put in $2.5 million, which cover the cost of all the planting. That project will generate $110 million over the lifespan of its project, even with relatively low carbon prices. So, for investors, our best return on equity is de-risking, doing the exploration work, and it means we don't need hundreds of millions of dollars or even tens of millions of dollars to do this well. We're the kind of early risk taker, de-risker, and then we can use other people's money, which is much less dilutive, much lower cost of capital to drive this through.
Yeah, you touched on some very good points there, and I think that's very important for people to understand that this is scalable and it's fairly low capital intensity from the Klimat X vantage point. Can you expand upon that in terms of how scalable this business model is, and what are some of the opportunities that you'll pursue in 2024?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, we have under high level agreement with the government, smallholders, and the regional chiefs in Sierra Leone. We've got 57,000 hectares of land. You know, if we had all the money up front and the nursery capacity, which takes a year or two to build up, we can plant all of that out. So take our 5,000 hectares and $110 million and scale that up to 57,000 hectares. There's no shortage of land in these countries, and there's no shortage of smallholders who have degraded land that has no real value to them. So, on that side, it's highly scalable. For our mangrove project in Sierra Leone, we've already planted 14 hectares as a test site. We've got access to about 7,000 hectares of land for restoration. Those systems are incredibly productive, much more productive even than our land-based systems. And then we have a mangrove conservation project that will produce 1.2 million to 1.4 million tons next year. And that we think we can monetize, middle to late part of next year. That could be, 20 to $30 million of net revenue to the business if we can monetize that. In Yucatan, we've got 100,000 hectares of land under agreement with the state government. That's also been signed off by the federal government. We can restore 30,000 hectares there. And we've got 30,000 hectares of land in Suriname that's agreed that we're going to restore and agree and restore with the government. So, even just with our current pipeline, we think we've got somewhere in the range of 45 million tons we can produce. When we expand that pipeline, we're looking at more like 100 million tons of production. And then last part is we've announced this previously as well. We developed a technology platform called Carbon Done Right, which allows for full traceability of ownership of the land through to the final buyer. Plus, it allows for early investment, potentially through a tokenized platform that will allow people to invest even early and get exposure to that. So, what we're trying to do is be ahead of the market. We're not going to win the climate change problem by doing 5,000 hectares at a time. We've got to have, our goal is to be producing 1 billion tons of credits from our pipeline, and we think that that's achievable.
I mean, those are some very large numbers you just threw out. So, just doing the math, I mean, even at $25 per ton, 100 million tons is $2.5 billion. Now, obviously, this is over an extended period of time. That's a few decades, right? But
Yeah,
still, you're a $9 million market cap company in Canada, talking
yeah.
about a pipeline of projects that generate revenue in the billions.
Well, our projections, and again, these are nothing that's not been disclosed. Our projections, those scenarios suggest the 43 million tons would be worth $2 billion over 30 years. And that's without us adding in new pipelines. So once we've de-risked these projects, they become an annuity. We can, sell some of that forward. But yeah, it's there's been enough skepticism. We've sort of proved everybody wrong in the sense in which, we developed the first 5,000 hectares. We found a large buyer, and we're off to the races.
Yeah, I mean, and I like the way that you describe it. It's like a recurring stream of revenue every year, and you're a first mover in this space, and especially being publicly traded. I'm pretty sure you're the only one at this point. At least like as a junior, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we're the only ones that are an owner operator of our assets. There's still a couple of royalty companies kicking around, but they've struggled because they're just an intermediary, right? They can buy fully validated, verified credits, hold them, and then try and get some arbitrage out of them. But the market is all about large corporates and large funds buying as much as they possibly can directly from the project owners because they want the quality control. So we're really the only option that gives investors that direct exposure to ownership in the underlying credits, not arbitrage on differences in pricing over time. So we think that's a unique offering. There's another company called Austrian Climate, which I was involved in and started in 2008. that's more of a consulting model for developing credits. So it's a great company, it's a great business, but they have small equity stakes in the projects. They'll change that over time, and we'll see that business grow. But I'm very happy to see other companies come into the space and do it the right way. On the private company side, I mean, there's companies like Imperative, there's South Pole, there's a number of others, Pollination, that have all moved into this space with private capital. But that's all accredited investors, large institutional checks, minimum 250,000 to $500,000 to get exposure. So we think we're in the sweet spot for mainstream investors.
Okay. And so, looking ahead to 2024, I think that I've been impressed with the progress that has been made in 2023. I feel like the company has achieved all of its key milestones on time and on budget. From what I've seen, I started covering the
Yeah.
company and shareholder in June, and I've been impressed. Now, the share price is a different story, and that's a whole nother conversation that we can have. But so from where we stand today, what sort of revenue are you anticipating in the next year, and what are some key milestones that the company has laid out for
Yeah.
2024?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the share price side is challenging, because when you have so little liquidity in the market, anytime we do a news release, I think we traded 250,000 shares the day of the BP news release and got a bit of a bump. But people are, it's tax loss season. It's great news at not a great time. We've been as high as 24 cents a share this year. We're hoping when markets recover. We're still very tightly held. We've got about 45% insider ownership in the business. We got a lot of marketing underway with Investing News Network and Frontier and Apaton in Germany. So, the goal has been, recognizing it's a difficult market, to just build awareness so that when things come back, we're front of mind for everybody. In terms of the milestones for this year and next year, we'll fully receive the $2.5 million from BP by July 2024. We expect they have an option to upgrade from 5,000 to 25,000 hectares. So we expect to see that in Q1 of next year. We expect to monetize the mangrove conservation project probably in Q3 of next year, which we think could be somewhere in the $20 to $30 million range, because we get a big early delivery of tons from that. And then we've got, we're working on partnerships and early monetization around our Yucatan project for this year. Suriname's going to take a little bit longer, I think, now. It's a very, very high value, very productive project. So it's, we may get lucky and do Q3, Q4, some revenues into that. But it's that one's a bigger project, and it'll take another 6 to 8 months to get all the technical work done on it. So, we're not just speculating about future prices. We've got real contracts and agreements coming into place that we've announced, and we anticipate being able to advance, in Q1 of next year.
Okay, very good. And what's your sense of what it's going to take for Klimat X to gain wider appreciation, like among investors? I mean, to be honest, the venture in Canada is a good exchange for a venture capital stage company, pre-revenue,
Yeah.
or definitely pre-profits, but it's fairly limiting in a lot of ways. And from a global perspective, a lot of nationalities they don't care about it, right? So they don't buy stocks, on the venture. If you're in the UK or you're in Germany, if you're in Australia, even Americans have a lot of challenges buying companies, that are traded on the venture. So you're missing out on a huge percentage of the global, investor pool. How do you sort of fix that? Is there any plan to list in the US, in the UK? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think the most I can say at this stage is, you're right that we've had very strong investor interest in the UK or from the UK, and that's from some of the small cap institutional investors that have deep pockets and believe in the ESG story and believe in carbon much more. So, you have to remember that I'm based in Vancouver, but my other partners and the leadership team are based out of the UK. And we spent a lot of time, in Scandinavia as well this year. I've spent a lot of time talking to investors that are a little bit more oriented towards this type of investment. And, we actively consider what we need to do to get um, dual listing or cross listing in 2024, if that opens the doors to more capital. So, we've been. I was at the Armchair Trader event in November and was a keynote speaker there, and it's just pushing on different kinds of doors when we go to the UK. So I would say that's Europe. UK is a prime target for us in terms of building an investor base and thinking about how we spread the wings of the company a little bit wider. I think the US is challenging for us. We're too small for NASDAQ. The climate change issue is still very divisive in the US. So there's a lot of people who are climate skeptics or anti-climate companies. It's a lot of exposure for a small cap company to go into a place where investors have no qualms about legal action against companies, not because we've done anything wrong, but because they just don't believe in climate change. So that the scale issue of the US market, I think, is a bit harder for us. The divisiveness of climate in the US, frankly, in an election year as well, is also not very appealing. Whereas, I walk around the streets of London, we go from house to house, talking to different bankers, and they're like, "This is a fantastic model, a great platform. This is what we should be doing." So very much open to where we might go with that. And I think something will happen in 2024. It's sort of, as you say, Rob, it's a very obvious place for us to build a bigger presence.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, because it's true in the EU and the UK. The climate change conversation is much further advanced, and again, I'm a mining guy, and I think climate change is very real. Now, we can argue about the causes of it and the time frames involved, but I think you'd have to be a flat earther to think that climate change doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Maybe a controversial statement to some, but for me, it's,
Yeah.
rocks are hard and, water is wet, and this industry is very needed.
Well, and what I said to I know I had a great debate with a guy from from Calgary about this. He was very skeptical about climate change, and it's my standard line to people is, if you don't believe in climate change but you want to invest, you just have to understand that other people believe in it, including our customers. And if they're buying, whether you think they're right or wrong about climate change is kind of irrelevant. There's massive demand there for credits. We still expect a $25 to $30 billion market by 2030. It's like, I don't have to convince you to believe in climate change. I have to convince you that we have customers and that the share price is going to go up, and then you should invest. And the guy laughed and said, "Yeah, no, that's a great point." So that's where we're positioned in the market. The demand signals are very strong. The Trove report was outstanding as well, in terms of showing real nuanced, detailed pricing changes. And so it's like, there's buyers. You may not believe in you may not have believed in blockchain, but at some point, enough people did that it moved the share price and enough people bought it. You may not believe in electric vehicles, but it's like, if that's, or hydrogen, but if that's where capital is flowing, where the money's going, then you're missing out if you're not getting some exposure to it.
Exactly. Well said. I do want to open the floor here. We got a few more minutes left here. I do want to open the floor if somebody has a question for James, CEO of Klimat X. And I'll throw one more question at you, put a bow tie on the conversation. So how well is the company financed right now, and what are some of the next milestones that investors should expect from the company in Q1 of next year?
Yeah, so we're on solid ground now for year end. We have another milestone payment due from BP at the end of December. I can now say it's BP. I don't have to pretend, hide that news. It's great news for us. So we have milestone payments that we've achieved with them. So we'll receive the next payment there. Early milestones next year, already foreshadowed in press releases, is we've been working on this technology platform that both is creates traceability and transparency, which gives us a premium on the credits over what we're getting, even what we're getting right now. Literally, you can buy a credit, click on a link, and see the exact piece of land that credit came from and what the growth potential is going to be over the next 30 years. So full traceability and transparency in a fully audited and transparent system. We also are looking at how we use that to create other sorts of trading opportunities and investment opportunities. It's a bit more of a precarious space from a regulatory perspective, but we're actively exploring how we can do that within some of the new guidance that's provided around things like STO offerings and that sort of thing. So that's a little bit further down the line, but we will have that tech announcement on the tech, and I expect we'll also have the announcement around the right of first offer that BP has to expand from 25,000 to 25,000 hectares. I'd say that's our big goals for Q1.
Okay, sounds good. James, looks like I hit all the questions. No more questions from the audience. Thanks a lot for a great year. Thanks for all these conversations that we've had, and I look for another great year from Klimat X in 2024.
Yeah, thanks. And look, I really appreciate your engagement with the company and support and interest in it. It's I probably do 10 or 15 calls with investors a week. I'm always happy to take time to talk to someone and walk them through the model. We build our following, and we've got a very loyal following of people who support our stock and see the upside. So for anyone that's on the call, if you want to reach out and ask any more questions, just contact me here or through my email address.
All right, perfect. Thanks a lot, James.
Thanks.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays.
Merry Christmas. Happy
Cheers.
holidays.